Welcome to Between the Shelves, the premier Save a Library podcast. I am your host, Alex, and this week we are talking about banned books because it is Banned Books Week. So before we start talking about some of our favorite banned books, I'm just going to go through some of the statistics that the American Library Association puts out every year right before Banned Books Week, just to give our listeners an idea of what it's like out there right now for libraries. So these statistics are from 2023 till the current day. This past year, public libraries saw a 92% increase in the number of titles targeted for censorship. This is smashing the new record from the previous year, which saw a 65% increase from 2022. So the record has been continually smashed for the last 3 years in a row. And school book bans have increased 300% this year, according to PEN America. So we're smashing records we don't want to be smashing this year.
Yeah, not the best.
The ALA said over 4,200 titles have been challenged. 47% of those titles feature LGBTQ individuals or people of color. And I will also say that these 4,200 titles are only the titles that are reported to the Office of Intellectual Freedom, the ALA's Office of Intellectual Freedom. And the ALA estimates that this accounts for only 3% of the challenges that actually take place in a given year. So they list a lot of reasons for that, some of which are just the librarian doesn't report it to the Office of Intellectual Freedom. I don't think anyone in this library would even think to do that unless it was a really outrageous, maybe even like violent encounter or something. Some other reasons they cite are the library doesn't have a reconciliation policy. A policy like the Save a Library has a policy where if you want to challenge a book, there's a formal process involved. You fill out a form for us to reconsider the material, et cetera, et cetera. We talked about this in the last year's Banned Books episode, so I won't go into all that again. But if a library doesn't have that policy, it's never going to be reported anyways. Sometimes the patron doesn't want to file a report. They just want to voice their concern or go right to the top of the authority and threaten somebody into banning a book. And the last reason they report is a library might ban a book, or not ban it, but they might just pull the book to avoid any confrontation in the first place. So that obviously they wouldn't report either. They get a challenge. They don't want to upset the community. They just pull the book right away and wipe their hands of the situation.
Pull the book or move it to a different department.
Right, exactly. There's a lot of different steps that can be involved before you start sending up your complaints up to the American Library Association national headquarters and things. So those are the reasons, accounting for 3% of actual challenges that are taking place. So who's actually banning the books? So 89% of book challenges are not focused on a single book, but they're actually focused on curated lists of books. So this is up from 5% in 2019. So in 2019 and beyond, most book challenges, a vast majority of book challenges, 89%, are not concerned parents challenging a particular book that upset them. It's political organizations challenging a curated list of books. That is by far the biggest change that is driving up the record-breaking numbers we're seeing every year of banned books. So these organizations are a loud minority. So every library, which is an organization that tracks these book challenges nationwide, just did a poll recently and found that 91% of people support the idea that other people shouldn't determine what you read. So the fact that 91% of people agree with the principles that you should mind your own business and everyone should have the ability to, or the freedom to read whatever they want to read, that 9% that doesn't agree with that is the loud minority that is making...
I think the numbers are somewhat hopeful that there's more people that,
But that said, they are making a lot of headway. That's why we see the numbers going up and up and up every single year. And just last year alone, there were 129 bills introduced into state houses nationwide to ban books. Two of them that stood out to me when I was doing research for that episode. Idaho passed one that barred minors from going to any section of the library outside of the children's department, and if they did, the library could be charged, and librarians could be jailed for allowing children outside of the children's department. And another one in Utah this one is interesting. I didn't really think of challenges this way, but this law that passed in Utah requires every school library to remove a book if a book has been challenged in 3 other districts. So this is a statewide policy.
Within the state, okay.
In the entire state. So imagine you have 3 counties that are politically minded on one side who want a book challenge. That triggers that the entire state, every county in the state, has to remove that book. So that's a very slippery slope, to say the least.
Feels like it can happen so quickly and like easily.
Yeah, this could happen in New York.
I take back my hopeful comments.
So I wanted to just lay the groundwork for what book challenges look like in 2024, and hopefully the rest of the episode will not be so dour, because we're going to be highlighting some of these books that have been challenged that we really enjoyed reading, and are worth reading. So before you go, I didn't introduce either of you, so I'm going to record that now.
Okay.
So joining me for this episode, I have brought the entire teen department upstairs today to the recording studio. Marianne, the head of Teen Services. Welcome, Marianne.
Hi, Alex.
And Lizzie from Teen Services. Welcome, Lizzie.
Hi.
Marianne, do you want to start us off on the right foot here?
Sure. So I guess I just read banned books. I didn't know it was supposed to be our favorite. So
well, it doesn't have to be your favorite necessarily. Okay. Just ones that you want to lift
discuss.
up.
Okay, so I read The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison, and I can't say it's a favorite, that's for sure. It is beautifully written. I mean, she's an amazing writer. But there are a lot of heavy topics with this. So I have a lot of notes that I wrote. There's a lot of trigger warnings for this one too. A lot of animal abuse. Actually, not a lot of animal abuse, but there is animal abuse. But there is a lot of sexual assaults. There's rape. And so, have either of you read The Bluest Eye?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you kind of know what it's about. So it takes place in 1941, and there are several characters that we meet. They're all Black. They are down south. I don't remember which state. And we meet a lot of adults, but we focus on the kids mostly, and they're on the onset of puberty. So one of the main characters is her name is Pecola, and she has 2 friends, Claudia and her sister Frida. And the parents of Pecola, they fight violently. Her father drinks a lot. His name is Charlie. Our backdrop is an ugly cycle of hostility, violence, and poverty. And every night, Pecola prays for blue eyes, thinking that if she looked different, pretty, like a white girl, those are her words, not mine, then everything would be better and she'd be considered beautiful. Okay, so several of the young girls we meet are assaulted by various other characters, but Pecola is raped by her father, Charlie, one night, and it is a very graphic scene, and then she ends up pregnant. And just before this, we get a history of Charlie and his wife, who's Pecola's mom, Polly, and we hear about his first sexual experiences when he's 14, and it is maybe something that shapes him for his future drunken rages. And then we meet another terrible character who has abused young girls, and he's a self-proclaimed psychic and faith healer. And then he talks about how Pecola came to him while she was pregnant and she asked for blue eyes. So now she's pregnant, she can't go to school, and she kind of dips into like some madness. She has hallucinations. She is talking to an imaginary friend. Now she has these blue eyes and she has this whole conversation with her. And I think this whole book it's Morrison. She's exposing the power and the cruelty of white middle-class American definitions of beauty. The book starts with like some of the chapters, although they're not really broken out into chapters. It starts with like readings of the Dick and Jane books that kids used in school back then. And the characters, if you're familiar with the Dick and Jane books, they're blonde, they're blue-eyed. So Black children are seeing and they're learning from these books, and they have no representation of themselves. So Morrison's zeroing in on the psychological damage done to a Black girl who self-destructively accepts someone else's definition of beauty. And then when discussing the rape and the assaulting of like all these children toward the end of the book, there are these you kind of believe it's just two young girls, but it turns out it is Piccola. And it is while she's kind of in this like madness state of she's hallucinating this conversation, and she talks about how she let how her father sure let him do it to her a lot, and how they're victim blaming, and it's just really sad. So it was written in the 60s, and it's constantly challenged ever since it was published in 1970. And on the list for 2023, it's number 6. Yes, number 6 in the most challenged book. So it's challenged for rape, incest, equity, diversion, and inclusion content, and it's claimed to be sexually explicit. So the book is definitely appropriate for high schoolers, though. It opens a lot of discussions about race, beauty standards, and how blonde hair and blue eyes is what the media makes us think is beautiful. And this is an ongoing theme, so I think this is still a relevant book. Some districts still require this book to be read, and in high school, this is something that the kids would be familiar with all these themes. Other important themes are internalized racism, racial identity, intergenerational trauma, and most importantly, well, not most importantly, but importantly, Morrison draws attention to too often marginalized subjects of sexual violence against women, especially Black women, most likely by someone they know. So, I mean, I understand why this book would get challenged a lot, but it's not really meant for young children. It is definitely appropriate for a high schooler. It opens up a lot of discussions. It was just really a really sad book.
Yeah, I think the heavy tones and the dark subjects that it touches on in the book are the reason it is banned so frequently. And a lot of the cases for these banned books you'll find is that people are not reading the entire book before they decide it's not appropriate for certain people. They're pulling out excerpts from a book, which, when you take this book as a whole and you read it all the way through, I mean, it's a pretty, it's beautifully written. Toni Morrison's one of our greatest novelists, but, she goes into some pretty dark places.
I think once you hear that there's an 11-year-old who's pregnant in the book too, I think people just start to freak out, and they don't know, they don't take the book as a whole, like you said. And, but there's a lot of important topics in here that, need to be discussed consistently. And, I hate to say, but like, timeless topics, they're just ongoing.
Yeah. And I was going to mention I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings by Maya Angelou for this episode, but when you told me you were going to mention The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison, I decided not to because they are very similar. And
never read that one.
I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings is a memoir, but it covers a lot of the same territory as The Bluest Eye. Yeah. And it's consistently in the top 10 most banned books ever. I think it might have the record for most bans of any book ever.
Oh, interesting.
Because mostly because it's been around for over 50 years now. But even from its first year out, it was challenged for all the same reasons. But it's remarkable because it's a memoir. I mean, it's not like Toni Morrison. It's a novel. Right. Like, this is her Maya Angelou. Like, that was her life. Mm-hmm. You can't
you can't take that away from her.
It's not
censoring somebody's life story.
Exactly. Yeah, I think it is an important book to read.
Yeah, that was my first Toni Morrison book that I've ever read. That was also the first one she wrote. So I'm glad I read it. I'm definitely glad I read it, but I'm going to need a break from the heavy stuff after that one.
Would you like to go next, Lizzie?
Okay, so my first book is The Outsiders, and I actually didn't know this was even challenged until this month because I saw we had it on the display for the banned books, and I was really surprised because I read that when I was in middle school. I'll just do a quick summary. So it was first published in 1967. It's by S.E. Hinton, and it's a novel about the main character, Ponyboy Curtis, who's a 14-year-old, and he lives with his two brothers, Derry and Soda. and it focuses on the class conflict between the greasers and the Socs. And Ponyboy is part of the greasers, and he's known for greasy hair, fighting, shoplifting. And the novel explores the story of Ponyboy and his struggles with right and wrong in a society, which he feels and believes like he's an outsider. So it kind of takes, I don't want to like, I mean, it's been out for so long, it's not even spoiling, but it starts when Ponyboy and his friend Johnny, I think it's Johnny, basically they get in a fight, and then Johnny ends up killing one of the Socs because he was drowning Pony. So they have to escape, and they have to, basically run for their lives, and they end up in a church, and it's just about like the bonding between the two of them. And then when they go back, there's just still the same issues of the Socs and the greasers. And it's mainly about the social class. And I don't know, I never really thought there was anything too crazy in it that would make it be banned. So then when I was looking it up, it says that in some schools and libraries, the depiction of underage drinking and smoking, crass language, violence, and so-called, quote, family dysfunction, that's why it's been banned. And it says that virtually all the characters are from broken homes. And then this was a quote from a website. It says, the irony, of course, is that the book is a critique of classism and the strife that emerges between rival gangs due to their varying socioeconomic status. So, yeah, I mean, the whole thing is that they're from broken homes, and it just shows almost like how the other half lives, that you don't really realize it maybe if you're in a higher class society. And it just shows how, everyone has the same issues. And like when I was looking up why it's important, it says Outsiders challenges social class stereotypes, and it can be transcended to relate to various class feuds. The young adult readers can relate to aspects of the characters from both sides of the class divide, making them realize they're not so different after all. But yeah, I was honestly really surprised that this was challenged. I don't think that the things like the underage drinking and smoking, it's more just like those are little side things that happen. That's not the main point. The main point is that, someone tried to drown the other class because they thought they weren't good enough, and then they ended up dying because of that. I feel like that's the biggest thing. And then having to, they had to run for their lives and things like that. Those are the bigger things.
Yeah, I think it's funny, like, if you look at, like, when a book was challenged, it's often, like, a reflection of the times. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering, I don't have this information, but I'm wondering if the book was challenged closer to when it was released, mm-hmm. as opposed to, like, nowadays where most books are challenged because they have gay characters or they touch mm-hmm. on, racial identity or something, or because this book was released in 1967. I looked it up when you were talking, and, we're, like, Vietnam War era, like, coming out of, like, the hippie culture and everything. I wonder if the book was banned as like a reaction to all that. Like, yeah. Like, oh, we need to get these youths under control, and this book's promoting drinking. So
right, like aggression and stuff like that. But if anything, I feel like it's doing the opposite in ways, because it's showing how, fighting and doing things like that have negative effects, because, it just causes more and more issues between the class, like in this case, between the two like gangs per se. And then the ending of it, should I say the ending? I think yeah, okay. Well, basically, Johnny ends up passing away due to like a church fire. They were hiding out in a church, so the church burns, and he saves the kids in there, but then he ends up passing away. And that was a huge part of it, is that they're like, oh wow, this greaser saved all these kids, and it's like, well, of course he did. Like, he's still just as good as a person as anyone else. And then Ponyboy, they were going to start fighting the Socs again, and then he stops, and then, they kind of finally settle, like, their feud. So that was really it.
Also kind of goes back to what we were just talking about, where, like, if somebody read the entire book, instead of picking out, highlighting certain parts of it that they don't like, mm-hmm. If they would actually get the moral of the story, that's, like, the irony of a lot of these book challenges is, like, well, if you read the whole book, it actually, like, the author is sort of in agreement with you, and this is, like, their way of explaining the situation. So, okay, I'm going to go next. So the first book I chose is currently the #1 most banned book in the country, and I wanted to mention it because I really, really enjoyed it, and it's very sad to me that this book is so widely challenged, because it's so beneficial. It was to me, at least. So the book is called Genderqueer by Maia Kobabe. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I wish I looked it up before the episode.
Kobe.
Kobe? It's Kobabe. Kobe? Kobabe? All right. I'm sorry if they're listening. So it's a graphic memoir focused on the author's adolescence and young adulthood as they struggle with gender dysmorphia, which is the feeling of distress as a result of incongruence between one's sex assigned at birth and one's gender identity. So as a memoir, the story is exceptionally paced and plotted. It's one of my favorite memoirs because it goes through their whole life, but it doesn't add any filler. It's just jumping from poignant moment to poignant moment, and each moment is a teachable lesson for the reader. And as a graphic novel, it's just the artwork is clean and vibrant. Most of it is laid out in like a very traditional panel composition, but when the author really excels when they break out of this traditional panel and they do like full page splash page illustrations, or they'll do sort of like an infographic style artwork to kind of usually to explain their inner, dialogue or something that they're grappling with, or to explain to the reader like very facts and figures based stuff about gender dysmorphia and being transgender and things like that, which as somebody who's a straight white male and all of that is very beneficial to me. Like sometimes I need people to just be like straightforward with me. It's just like it works on so many levels because it is a great memoir if you just want to read it as like this is this person's story, and now you can witness all the struggles and the triumphs that they experience along the way. Or you can read it as like, I need to know about people who are different from me. This is going to give me like most of what I need to know, or at least the foundation for how to understand a group of people better. It's just an all around fantastic graphic novel. It won the Young Adult Library Services Association Alex Award for graphic novel that was written for adults, but is also could be beneficial for teens. So this is in our adult section if you're looking for it in the library. But if you are a teen, I think there's nothing about this graphic novel that it doesn't go over your head. It's definitely something you could benefit from reading. And it was also a finalist for the Stonewall Award the year it came out. I've already mentioned it's the most banned book in the country, and it has been since 2021. The reasons I think for this is the title is easily flagged by people making these lists. The title is genderqueer, so if you're Google searching any of those terms, this is going to be the first thing that pops up. That's honestly probably the number one reason this book is banned more than other books. It's award-winning, so that just the attention of winning awards brings more attention to it, brings these groups that are looking for titles to ban, brings more attention to that. Yeah, and finally, the fact that it is a graphic novel, like I've been saying time and time again on this episode, people who are looking to cherry pick, sections of a book to raise at like a school board meeting or a library board meeting and say, look how objectionable this book is. A graphic novel is really easy to do that because you can flip through a graphic novel and because you're just looking at pictures and hold up a picture of a naked body and say, look at what you're showing to people. So I think for all of those reasons is why it's the number one book. It's certainly not the most in-your-face graphic book you've ever read by a long stretch of the imagination. So, yeah. So, Genderqueer by, I'm butchering their name again, Maia Kobabe? Sorry again, I apologize, but it's definitely worth reading. Do either one of you read this one?
I did read it. I read it a couple of years ago when it was really getting in the news, and I really enjoyed it too. I agree with you, as like a memoir. It was just such a good read. It was such a good book to learn about this transition that, Maia's whole life, that is something so different than how I experience life. And, you learn more empathy, you learn about, differences and...
But like one of the main things that I think people will benefit from reading this book is it shows that like Maia was struggling with gender dysmorphia from a very early age. And it's not something that they just like flipped on a switch like that later in life in their teens or something. Like this is something they've been struggling with for a long, long time. And the fact that the graphic novel, again, with like the plotting of it is so good is because it jumps from moment to moment across their life where all of these confrontations come to a head. Things you if you had a traditional upbringing, you would never even think twice about. Like going to the beach, they couldn't take their shirt off, even though they identified as a male. And then they didn't understand why they couldn't take their shirt off at the beach. And it's just like all these things, like then through school and college and like relationships, and it just a huge conflict in their life. To put yourself in the headspace of somebody who has to deal with that time and time and time again, I think it's just this book does a great job of that.
Yeah, and I think like you had mentioned, graphics wise, there's not that much. Like if you are flipping through it, there's only a very small amount of pictures that might be taken, and just like this is why it doesn't belong. Our children shouldn't see this. But again, yeah, if you put it as a whole, you see why that actually is an important graphic to include in this book. But that's always the one that's like picked up and shown.
Right. And I should say,
is a shame.
Because this is an audio medium and you can't see it, like we're talking about like the Simpsons style like art. Like it's not like realistic paintings or something or photographic illustrations. Like it's just so silly. Like
illustrations,
Yeah. So that's the first one I wanted to mention. Genderqueer. Back to Marianne.
All right, so along the same lines then of graphic novel, I chose Flamer as my second book to talk about, and I ended up really liking this book a lot. So I gave it 5 stars on Goodreads, which I'm excited that this was, it wasn't like this heavy, depressing book either. The illustrations were really, really great. I really liked them. And so it's written by and drawn by Mike Curato, and it is a semi-autobiographical book. So it is fiction, but he does say in it that it is semi-autobiographical. A lot of the experiences that his character, who's Aiden, experiences he went through. So Aiden is in his summer between 8th and 9th grade. He went to a Catholic middle school, and now he's starting a public high school. So he has been bullied. He doesn't really have any friends, but this summer, he's going to enjoy it. He is in a Boy Scout camp. It's a sleepaway camp, and he's making some friends, but there are still bullies there, and they're teasing him. And he's getting teased because he's half Asian, because he's effeminate, and just basically because he's different. So the reasons why, when I had to look, I mean, I could, I read the book and I could say, okay, these are all the things that, why I think that it is being challenged. Most obviously, it's LGBTQIA+, and it's claimed to be sexually explicit. So those were the reasons that were put on the ALA website. It's number 5 on the 2023 list. But this book has so many things that adolescents could relate to. And I mean, here I am, an adult reading it, and it is, it's focused on a young boy, and here I am, a much older woman. But like I found some of these things relatable still, like thinking back to my adolescence. So some of the topics that they focus on for this book: conflicts at school. His parents are constantly fighting. His parents are crossing verbal boundaries with the kids, asking for advice on their marriage. There's domestic abuse, bullying at school, racism, suicidal ideation. And as I was reading it, I'm reading it how I think I have a young son who's going to be 12 next week. So I am reading it and I'm thinking about like how he would view it. And I immediately thought that, wow, this kid, Aiden, like he's a lot like most of the kids that like I see at the library, or just like middle schoolers now in general entering high school. So he makes friends during this whole time. He's got a pen pal friend. And the friend that he's sharing his tent with at the camp, he starts to crush on, and he kind of makes a move on him one night and doesn't go well. So he's really depressed and he's really down. And then towards the end, he flirts with the idea of dying by suicide, because he feels like he can't go on. But he's visited by this flaming angel who's really a superhero that he wants to be like. And this angel makes him realize that he is enough. And the portrayal of this ideation was like just so beautifully done by the illustrations. It wasn't I mean, it's a heavy topic, but like it wasn't like super dark and scary. They did it in like such a beautiful way. The book takes place in 1995, but all these topics, I mean, it was written recently, but all the topics that, in 1995, they were dealing with these things just as, kids are dealing with it right now. The boys, they are acting the same way all the boys did in this book. They are at that pubescent age, those years, so they're making those crude jokes. They're calling each other slurs. I mean, the kids are doing that now. So it's a really relatable book, I think, that anybody reading it would find something in this book. And it's just important because of the intense topics, the coming of age. It's relatable. And just how you were saying about Maia's book, this one is, although fiction, it is semi-autobiographical. So, trying to block access to somebody's truth is infuriating. Did anybody read this book?
I haven't. It's on my to-read list.
No, but you sold me
to read it. It's really good. It is.
Is this in the YA in the teen section?
Yes, it is, and it does belong there. So while I see why, I see, yes, okay, there's all these topics, they're hard topics, but people are afraid of bringing up these topics to their children. They think they're protecting them by putting a book like this away when really it's only going to help them. Like, wow, look at this. This kid is so relatable. He's just like me, and I know, people, parents, maybe if they're the ones complaining, or people in general, are so frightened by the fact that this book is showing an illustration of this child before or while he's thinking about, dying by suicide. But the fact is, talking about suicide doesn't encourage it, but actually does the opposite. You're supposed to speak with your children about these things. And I just think that this book would open up really great conversations. If your child's reading it, you should pick it up and read it too.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Cool.
Like the idea that all these bad things exist because of the book and not that the book is trying to air out the topic so we can discuss it and grapple with it is just like a fascinating.
Just like these books aren't going to turn you queer if you're reading them, they're also not going to make you contemplate suicide.
No more than a video game is going to turn you into a psychopathic killer.
Exactly.
I mean, look at me, I'm fine.
And you're a video gamer, yeah, it's true.
Yeah,
maybe. Actually, maybe we're not sure.
Flamer. By who's the author again?
Flamer by Mike Curato.
Check out the show notes.
Last names today.
Yeah, we're butchering. If I apologize if we're butchering the names of any of the authors.
If Mike and Maia are listening,
I'll link to all of these in the show notes. So just go check the show notes and you can check it out at the library. Lizzie, what do you got for us?
Okay, so my second book is going to be The Handmaid's Tale. So I read this in college. I do think that it's definitely for older people. I don't think that any middle schooler should be reading it. But so the summary, it's by Margaret Atwood, and it's a dystopian future where totalitarian society forces fertile women, known as handmaids, into childbearing slavery. It's not okay. So I noticed that, and something that we discussed in class a lot was that. So the names of the characters. So it's OF, like of Fred, of Warren. Have either of you read it?
A long time ago.
I've only seen the show.
Basically, the name of the women is from the name of the men. So it would be like of Alex, like that's how the names would work. And throughout the story, you're not sure if the narrator is ever actually named. But there was one quote that I wanted to read, because this is the only thing that thinks that she might have said her name. It says, "We learn to lip read, our heads flat on the beds, turned sideways, watching each other's mouths. In this way, we exchange names from bed to bed. Alma, Janine, Dolores, Myra, and June." So all those other characters are named except June. So that was just like a fact I wanted to say. And so since its publication in 1985, the book has been banned or faced calls for banning in states across America, even in Portugal and Spain. So the grounds of profanity, sexual content, being anti-Christian, and featuring LGBTQIA+ characters. It features strong language, emotional and physical violence, and a couple of graphic sex scenes. There are corpses hanging. It is a tough read. And then there's also some suicide by hanging. So it's basically Alfred, and she's telling the story of what's happening in real time. It's like a future dystopian, and I think there was like a virus that happened, and basically it just caused a war, and it basically just reset the whole society. And you find out at the end of the novel, it's like basically the epilogue, that there is a college class way in the future, and there's a professor, and they found all of the Handmaid's Tale basically on tapes. So they're actually like analyzing the tapes, and they're talking about it, and they're talking about, the life that they lived. I mean, my professor would always say, it's not that far away, everyone, which is scary, it's like, but she would say that like every day. And, you don't want to think of it like that, but it is really eye-opening in the sense of how quickly the women lost power in this book. It happens overnight. The main character, she goes to pay for like a coffee, and they say, oh, your card's declined, and she has no money. She gets fired from her job. And then it slowly becomes, these different groups of women just serving the higher beings and the men and the wives. It's really intense, it's not, like you said, for the Bluest eye, it's not like a happy read, but it is really eye-opening. So I wanted to read some of like the important keys. It says that there is a powerful portrayal of a totalitarian society. So it depicts a future where a conservative religious group has taken over and subjugated women. It is, I think the main thing is that it's haunting and it's uncomfortable, because there are scenes and sexual content that are made to make the reader think about things they don't want to think about, which I think is probably the biggest thing, is that, it's almost like a rapish scene, but she has to just kind of like give herself to this man so that he can try and get her pregnant and give birth. And that's like, and it's in explicit detail about what happens. And then that's just her job. That's what she does every day. And also that this was from a website too, but it says, basis in historical fact, Atwood maintains that the Republic of Gilead, which is the Republic in the book, is based on trends already seen in the U.S. at the time of her writing. It's a little creepy.
It's just gotten worse since 1985.
Yeah, and then it's just
the
like
professor is right.
Yeah. So, I mean, I would recommend reading it. I think it's really, it is dark, but it is really eye-opening. It's something that I think that you remember after the fact. And, if it's a good show, you could read the book and then you could watch the show and you could see that. So, yeah.
I got to reread this. I read this over a decade ago, and I loved it then, but I completely forgot all like the virus and all the other in like her backstory and stuff. I forgot all of that, so I got to reread this.
Yeah.
It's not long either.
It isn't that long, and they don't. In the show they don't talk about like the virus or anything, so that's really interesting. That makes me want to read the book,
because that was also a big part of why I mentioned that they took away. I meant to say clear, but they took away the names of like the Offerton, of Warren, and people like that. So when she states her name at the beginning, you don't realize it because she never says it again, because she doesn't go by that anymore. And the issue that they have is that because of this virus and this war, the babies come out deformed. So that's why they keep trying to get the women pregnant over and over again, because not many women are fertile anymore, or the men also aren't fertile, but they just blame it on the women. So it also deals with like, almost like a birth, like almost like abortion-y birth type of topic. So it's good.
We're going to follow that up. Okay, so my last book is All American Boys. This had two authors, Jason Reynolds and Brendan Kiely, Kiely. It's a YA novel. It came out in 2015. It's about two teens living in Springfield, Ohio. The first teen is Rashad. He's a young black student, ROTC student, high school student, and he is beaten and arrested by a police officer who believes that Rashad is trying to steal from a convenience store. And then the other character is named Quinn. He is Rashad's classmate. Quinn is white, and Quinn is also family friends with the police officer. So the novel kind of jumps back and forth between the two characters. Rashad is recovering from his injuries and watching this, this video go viral, and he's grappling with his father, who's very conservative and is an ex-cop and has taught his kids to, dress a certain way and live a certain way and stay out of trouble. And Rashad, who is kind of replaying the scene over and over in his head, is trying to figure out, what went wrong, explaining to his family, like, I didn't do anything, all of that. And then meanwhile, Quinn, who is in school, he's sort of caught up in the middle of everything. So he's in between, his family and his family friends who are seeing the situation from the police officer's point of view, and all of the students who are seeing it from Rashad's point of view. And he's kind of being pulled back and forth. So, the novel is really excellently structured because it bounces back and forth every chapter between these two characters, and it's just constantly building the tension and ratcheting it up a little bit more and a little bit more until everything kind of finally comes to a head at the end of the novel. It's just a great novel. I don't read very much YA, but it's just this one was really well written. Some of the dialogue's a little cringy, but that's probably mostly because it's teens. Most of the dialogue is teens talking to other teens, but it was really well written. And I have a couple of notes here on why I think it was banned. So the book was written in 2015, and it had some critical appraise when it came out, but it basically went under the radar until 2020, which is when it was finally challenged, and it went from a book that had received no challenges to being on the top 10 most challenged books of that year. And I believe that was because in 2020 we had the Black Lives Matter protests, and that sort of the subsequent backlash from those protests, this book kind of got swept up in that movement, which led it to becoming a hot topic at schools and libraries. It's a shame because this book, like you were saying earlier, Marianne, like this book could have been used to foster some very constructive conversations in schools, and instead was just wiped off the shelf. So yeah, it's a real shame because this was a great book. It's just I'm surprised it's not a movie because it is like written as though it's like a screenplay for like a thriller. It's like a 3-act structure. It builds up the attention. It has a nice finale. Like, it's great. I'm surprised it hasn't been adapted into a film yet. But
yeah, and just I read that one a couple of years ago, and I agree with everything you said. It was just such a great book. It was such a good read, and I think it was. And I was trying to look to see if this was like one of the first, but I think it's like one of the first teen books depicting like police brutality too.
Yeah, definitely. I couldn't none of them came to mind, any other books like this.
Yeah, and they do it so well too. I mean, the authors are both really great, but Jason Reynolds, I mean, he was like the children's book ambassador through ALA a couple of years ago. I mean, he's just like well known. He's a beloved author. Anything he does is amazing. Anything he writes is amazing. But it also makes sense too what you were saying, 2020 when it started getting its challenges too, because that was around the George Floyd.
Yeah.
Also, so
yeah, there's so many parallels with the George Floyd story, and I just had to keep checking like when was this book written because it's
before
very eerily. Well, so unfortunately, this is an all too familiar story, but it's very interesting that this was written in 2015 and had so many parallels to what was on every dining room table's discussion in 2020. So, all right, how do we end this episode on a high note?
Cheery.
Come to the library and get banned books. We have them.
Get all your banned books at the library.
Right, and we have our banned book displays on. I know we'll have ours up probably for the whole month, where we're highlighting other books that were challenged or banned. I made some cool banned book bookmarks. If you want to come in and collect them all, I think there's 30 or 40.
Oh,
so collect them all. They're like Pokemon cards.
Will they be worth anything one day?
Oh, sure. Thank you both for coming on the episode and sharing your books with me. I know this isn't like a cheery topic like Star Wars or something, but hopefully we'll have you both on again soon to talk about lighter topics. All right, thanks for coming. All right, bye.